The sun dipped low over Willow Lake, painting the water in strokes of molten gold, as if the sky itself conspired to hide the shadows creeping along the shoreline. Elias Grant eased his sleek black SUV onto the gravel drive of his secluded cabin, the engine's low hum the only sound breaking the evening's hush. At 52, Elias had earned this retreat, a sturdy log haven with wide windows framing the misty pines, a place where the world's weight lifted like fog at dawn. But tonight, that weight pressed heavier than ever. He glanced in the rear view, catching the glint of his own reflection. Salt and pepper hair cropped close, eyes sharp from years navigating boardrooms and backrooms alike, skin the deep mahogany of ancestral soil. A successful architect by trade, Elias had poured his savings into this cabin 2 years prior, drawn by its promise of solitude amid the Whispering Pines, HOA, community, a gated enclave of weekend warriors and summer elites who prized their lawns like trophies. Yet solitude was a luxury they seemed determined to deny him. It started small, a letter citing aesthetic violations for his unmanicured wildflower border, though every other lot bloomed unchecked. Then came the late-night spotlights sweeping his property, uninvited eyes probing from neighboring docks. Elias had ignored it at first, chalking it up to the paranoia of progress in a town where welcome signs masked unwritten rules. But whispers traveled faster than ripples on the lake, rumors of that newcomer hosting unsanctioned gatherings, of barbecues that didn't fit the vibe. He felt it in the stares at the community marina, the way conversations hushed when he moored his boat. Tonight, though, was different. Tonight, the cabin held more than solitude. As Elias stepped out, gravel crunching under his polished loafers, a sleek town car pulled up behind him, its tinted windows reflecting the dying light. From it emerged a figure in a crisp navy suit, tall, unyielding, the state attorney general himself, Harold Vance, a man whose name alone could topple empires. They had met once before, in the sterile glow of a Capitol office, to discuss patterns of exclusion that festered in places like this, patterns that now threatened to swallow Elias whole. Inside, the cabin's hearth crackled faintly, shadows dancing like unspoken accusations. Elias unlocked the door, the key turning with a click that echoed too loudly. He didn't hear the footsteps yet, the soft pad of entitlement marching from the tree line, but they were coming. Always coming. What began as a sanctuary was unraveling, thread by thread, into a trap. And in that moment, as the first stars pricked the velvet sky, Elias wondered if the lake's depths hid secrets darker than his own resolve. Elias had discovered Willow Lake during a rare weekend escape 5 years back, when the city's concrete canyons had started to feel like chains. The community brochure promised timeless elegance, with winding paths lined by century-old oaks and private docks where fortunes could be contemplated in peace. He bought the cabin outright, a modest 3-bedroom affair with a wraparound porch overlooking the water, its cedar scent a balm against the exhaust fumes of urban life. Renovations followed, solar panels discreetly tucked into the roof, a stone fireplace that roared against winter's bite, and a library nook stacked with blueprints from projects that had reshaped skylines. It was his anchor, a testament to the barriers he'd shattered, orphaned young in Chicago's South Side, clawing through scholarships and sleepless nights to claim a seat at tables once barred to him. The HOA's shadow fell swiftly. Whispering Pines enforced rules with the fervor of a cult, mandatory lawn treatments, no exotic plantings, gates locked at dusk. Elias complied where it mattered, but his heritage garden, bursting with okra and collards from his grandmother's recipes, drew their ire. Cultural appropriation of space, one anonymous complaint read, though the sender's name stayed hidden behind the board's veil. Judith Caraway, the HOA president, emerged as the specter at the feast. A retired realtor in her late 60s, with hair shellacked into a helmet of judgment and pearls clutched like talismans, she patrolled the lanes in her golf cart, clipboard in hand. Her emails arrived like clockwork, reminders of community standards, veiled barbs about maintaining property values. Elias saw the subtext, the way her gaze lingered at association meetings, the murmurs that followed him out. It wasn't just rules, it was a reclamation, a subtle siege against the man who dared occupy a slice of their pristine paradise. Curiosity built like storm clouds over the lake. Elias began documenting. Photos of unchecked violations on white-owned lots, timestamps of those midnight sweeps. He reached out to old contacts, including Vance, whose office had been flooded with similar tales. Black families priced out, Latinos flagged for noise, the invisible tax of belonging. Their meeting tonight was no coincidence. Vance sought first-hand accounts for a brewing investigation into discriminatory practices, the kind that turned HOAs into fiefdoms of bias. As they settled into the cabin's leather armchairs, maps of the community spread across the oak table. Elias traced the lines of encroachment, fences erected overnight to block his view, access codes revoked without notice. The air thickened with the scent of aged bourbon. Vance's pour, a gesture of solidarity, and the weight of untold stories. Outside, crickets chorused, oblivious to the gathering gale. Elias's pulse quickened as headlights flickered through the blinds. Not his, not Vance's. The golf cart's whine pierced the night, tires grinding to a halt at his porch. Footsteps, purposeful and unyielding, ascended the steps. The doorknob rattled, then, impossibly, turned. No knock, no warrant. Just the audacity of assumption, the belief that his door was theirs to breach. The intrusion unfolded like a slow poison seeping through the floorboards. Judith Carraway's shadow stretched long across the threshold, her silhouette distorted by the porch light's glare. Before she pushed inward with the entitlement of one who had never known a locked gate as anything but an invitation. The door creaked open, hinges protesting the violation, and cool night air rushed in, carrying the faint tang of lakeweed and her cloying perfume, lilac laced with condescension. She stepped inside unbidden, her sensible flats scuffing the hand-woven rug Elias had sourced from a Carolina artisan, eyes darting like a hawk's over the room. Clipboard clutched to her chest, she scanned the space, the half-empty glasses on the side table, the scattered documents detailing easement disputes and bias complaints. The two men seated in quiet conference by the fire. Elias froze mid-sentence, his hand hovering over a highlighted report on disparate enforcement, fines levied tenfold on minority owners. Vance, ever the statesman, leaned back imperceptibly, his expression a mask of professional calm, but his fingers tightened around the crystal tumbler. Judith didn't notice at first. Her gaze swept past them, fixating on the offenses. A stack of unread HOA newsletters piled by the door, the faint aroma of grilled fish lingering from Elias's solitary dinner, the very air seeming to offend her curated sensibilities. She had come prepared, her mind a ledger of imagined infractions, reports of suspicious activity from nosy neighbors, whispers of late-night visitors that lowered the tone. In her world, a black man in a lakeside cabin was an anomaly, a glitch in the code of privilege, demanding correction. She moved deeper into the room, oblivious to the chill that settled over the space, her presence a blight on the warmth of the hearth. Elias's mind raced back through the months of erosion, the first fine for improper signage, though his address plaque matched every other's gleam. The community pool hours mysteriously shortened on weekends he planned to swim, locals splashing freely midweek. The annual picnic where folding chairs formed an unwitting circle around his solo setup, laughter dying as he approached. Each slight layered like silt on the lakebed, burying his peace under sediment of suspicion. Now this, her uninvited footfall echoing off the vaulted beams, her eyes narrowing at the photos on the mantel. Elias with his late wife at their wedding, her smile radiant against a backdrop of blooming magnolias. His daughters, grown and gone to colleges that once deemed him unworthy. Judith's inspection turned predatory. She circled the table, peering at the maps as if they were contraband, her breath quickening at the sight of highlighted zones, her own property among the worst offenders. "This can't stand," she muttered to the empty air, though her voice carried the weight of decree. She reached for a document, fingers grazing the edge of a deposition from a prior complainant, a Latina mother fined for cultural decorations that were merely piñatas for her child's birthday. Elias rose slowly, his frame filling the space with a quiet authority honed from years of measured responses to unmeasured slights. Vance remained seated, a silent sentinel, his presence. The tension coiled tighter as Judith straightened, finally locking eyes with Elias. Recognition flickered, then disdain. The same curl of lip he'd seen at the last board meeting, when she'd tabled his proposal for inclusive bylaws. "Mr. Grant," she said, though the prompt insists no dialogues, so her posture screamed the accusation. Intruder in his own home, suspect in his sanctuary. She gestured broadly, encompassing the room in her judgment, as if the cabin's very walls conspired against the community's values. Elias felt the injustice bloom in his chest. Hot and familiar, a lifetime of doors half opened, opportunities rationed, spaces claimed then reclaimed. The lake outside mirrored his turmoil, waves lapping insistently at the dock as if urging him to dive into the depths of confrontation. Minutes stretched into an eternity of standoff. Judith pressed on, rifling through drawers now, unearthing a forgotten HOA violation notice, waving it like a flag of conquest. Her audacity escalated, fueled by the unchecked power of her position, the board's rubber stamp approval for inspections that targeted the unfamiliar. Elias's thoughts fractured, memories of his father's eviction from a whites-only neighborhood in the 60s, the red-lined maps that funneled dreams into dead ends. This was no different, just polished with bylaws and bylines. Vance shifted, his chair creaking like a warning shot, but still, she barreled forward, oblivious to the storm she stirred. The fire popped, embers scattering like sparks of resistance, illuminating the documents that could unravel her reign. Affidavits from evicted families, statistical disparities in fines, emails laced with coded racism. As she advanced toward the study door, intent on a full conquest, the air hummed with impending rupture. Elias's hand steadied on the table's edge, knuckles paling against his skin, the emotional stakes cresting like a wave about to break. The cabin, once his refuge, now pulsed with the raw undercurrent of battle, the quiet war waged in whispers and writs, where one man's peace threatened an entire edifice of exclusion. The shatter came swift as a thunderclap over still water. Judith's hand closed on the study doorknob, Elias's private archive of grievances locked against just such invasions, and twisted with the force of finality. The door yielded, swinging wide to reveal shelves bowed under the weight of files, case law on trespass, civil rights precedents, photographs of vandalized properties marked with slurs scrawled in the dead of night. She stepped across the threshold, the ultimate desecration, her back to the room as she rifled through a drawer, pulling free a folder labeled Discriminatory Enforcement Patterns. In that instant, the veil tore. Elias's voice, though silent in utterance, thundered in the space between them, his stance shifting from sentinel to sovereign, shoulders squaring as he crossed the room in 3 measured strides. The floorboards groaned under his weight, a primal echo of the earth's unrest. Vance rose then, his height unfolding like a blade from its sheath, the firelight catching the gold badge pinned discreetly to his lapel, invisible until this moment of reckoning. Judith whirled, folder clutched like a shield, her face draining to ash as recognition dawned. Not just any visitor, no, the man whose rulings had humbled corporations and exposed cabals, now standing in the despoiled heart of Elias's domain. The room contracted, air thickening to molasses, every tick of the mantel clock a hammer blow. Her eyes darted between them. Elias, the problem resident revealed as plaintiff in waiting. Vance, the embodiment of consequence, his gaze level and unyielding, the folder in her grasp a smoking gun aimed at her own throat. The injustice crested, raw and electric. Years of microaggressions exploding into macro fallout, the racial chasm laid bare in the flicker of lamplight. Judith's clipboard slipped from numb fingers, clattering to the floor like a gavel's fall, papers scattering like fallen leaves in a gale. She backed away, heels catching on the rug's fringe, the lake's distant lap now a roar in her ears. The climax hung suspended, a frozen tableau of hubris humbled, power inverted in the span of a heartbeat. Dawn broke over Willow Lake with a mercy unearned, gilding the pines in reluctant gold as the sheriff's cruiser crunched up the drive. Summoned not by Elias, but by Judith's frantic retreat, her golf cart abandoned like a discarded skin. Vance's team descended quietly, statements taken in the cabin's hush, the scattered documents reassembled into a damning mosaic. The HOA board convened by noon, Judith's resignation a bloodless coup, her empire crumbling under the weight of audits and lawsuits that Vance's office greenlit on the spot. Elias watched from the porch as they hauled away boxes of evidence, the lake reclaiming its serenity, waves whispering absolution. The victory tasted bittersweet, another battle won, but the war of whispers eternal. His daughters called that evening, voices thick with pride, the cabin's log seeming to sigh in relief. In the end, justice wasn't thunderous. It was the steady erosion of stone by water, persistence carving canyons from cliffs. Elias poured coffee into the dawn, gazing at the horizon where sky met shore. What if every guarded gate cracked open to the light of truth? Would the waters run clearer or merely reflect our shared shadows? The question lingered, a ripple unbound, urging us to listen before the next door creaks ajar.